Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Columbia Climate School's virtual information session, specifically highlighting our MA in Climate and Society program. We're really excited to go into a deep dive on Columbia Climate School and the resources, the academics, and especially leaning into our fantastic MA program. Joining me today is the one, the only Ian Hunt, which we are so appreciative of, currently enrolled in the program. I'm just going to give it another minute just to allow students to log in and join the Zoom call. But while I do, this is my shameless opportunity to test audio because I love doing that. We have the chat box disabled, but we do have the Q&A function open. So we're going to ask you to use the Q&A function when asking questions. But just for my own treat and delight, if you would go ahead and type in the Q&A where you're joining from. I love to see just the diverse nature of our prospective student population, especially in terms of geographic diversity. So, and I'll just shout out where I am right now. I'm located in New York City, with very close to the Columbia University campus. Today it's a bit of a snow day. There's heavy weather. So, does anybody want to kick off the chat and share where you're joining us from? I'm going to take a quick peek. I can't help myself. Oh, Stephanie, stay warm. Boston, Gowrie, welcome. I used to live up there. The Hudson Valley. Okay, good. We're fairly local. Nikki, Atlanta, welcome. Excellent. Providence. Oh, Nicholas, thanks so much for joining. We're so glad you're here. Los Angeles. Welcome, Grace. You have much better weather than us right now. Napa. Melinda, I'm jealous. It's official. Jake. Oh, Jake, I'm so glad you're joining us today. Welcome from Cleveland, Ohio. We have another Ohio native. That'd be Ian. We're going to get into that shortly. Different section of Ohio. Welcome from State College, Pennsylvania. Palestine, welcome. Washington Heights, Savannah, not too far. We're neighbors, welcome. Mumbai, India, awesome, Manish. Thank you so much and welcome. And Angela, Seattle. For those of you in California, I salute all of you. I know it's 7 a.m. over there, so I really do appreciate you guys joining the session today. Chile, Pablo, welcome. I'm so glad you made it. That's awesome. All right, well, I love seeing just, again, the sheer number of different locations that are joining us and continents represented. Climate is a global issue. So the fact that we have students from all over the country and the world that are interested in this is critical and gives me hope, certainly. So I'm going to go ahead and kick things off. My name is Alfred Ayub. I'm the Senior Director of Admissions and Marketing here at Columbia Climate School. And joining me today is Ian Hunt, a current student enrolled in the MA in Climate and Society program. And I'm going to be asking Ian to reflect on his experiences in the program and also his experiences prior to joining the program throughout the session. It's a fairly casual info session. I want to lean into the casual, and I want you guys to ask questions through the Q&A. The more questions, the better. That's you're going to get more facts and details out of us by doing so. So questions are only a good thing. Please ask the questions. Also joining us today is Vichy, one of our other current students in the program. You might have seen Vichy featured in our application tips and strategy session. So Vichy's on the back end helping out with Q&A. Thank you again so much, Vichy. And then also our colleague, Damaris Diaz, our assistant director here in the enrollment office, also assisting with Q&A. So going into the agenda, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about Columbia University and the climate school's history, recent history, although I think you're going to find out a little bit more about our longstanding foundations. We'll also discuss the student profile, kind of who studies in the MA Climate and Society program. We'll then deep dive into the curriculum, specifically the Climate Core curriculum and the fantastic opportunities both within Columbia Climate School's electives, as well as the cross-registration journey. I'll also be highlighting our internships and capstone opportunities, specifically in the summer months. And then we'll go into the phenomenal professional development and career service opportunities and wrap things up with financial aid. And of course, my favorite part, the application process. Although some of you guys, interestingly, are already admitted to the program. I spot you in the Q&A, which is awesome. So those of you that are admitted, congratulations. And again, questions are always encouraged. And Paul, I noticed that you raised your hand. If you have any questions, though, feel free to use the Q&A function. So now I'd like to go ahead and just give a brief introduction on Ian, and I'd like to hear Ian kind of share a little bit more about himself. But as I mentioned briefly in the earlier, Ian is a native of Ohio, in fact, Cincinnati, Ohio to be exact. And Ian comes from an arts background. For those of you that might be attending multiple sessions, you'll notice that the alumni or the current students I invite all have very, very different kind of education backgrounds and journeys. Last fall, I had a student that had a chemical engineering, or actually was an alum that had a chemical engineering degree prior to joining Climate and Society. We also had one of our other students currently enrolled in the program having a data science degree, joining in the most recent session. Ian's giving us a very different flavor, so to speak. Ian actually has a theater performance, playwriting, and costume design degree, and pivoted into the climate space, having done some really interesting work in the Sierra Mountains, which I'm going to allow him to talk about. So, Ian, if you could give us a little bit of background on yourself and the work that you were doing in the Sierra Mountains, and then finally, kind of your climate story, it would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm so excited to see all of you here. Hi, I'm Ian, as Alfred said. While I was studying theater, I found climate theater, and that was kind of my niche. That was my way into the climate space, and I really enjoyed hearing and telling stories about different either different climate catastrophes or different climate solutions. And once the COVID 2020 pandemic kind of put the theater industry to a halt, I pivoted and worked with the Forest Service. So I lived in the Sierra Mountains in a tent, thinking it would be a little gap year thing, maintaining backcountry trails. And then I fell in love with it. And I fell in love with doing climate work. And so from there, I stayed in the Sierras. I lived just outside of Yosemite National Park. And I was doing water conservation out there. So we were reforesting burn scars, planting trees, planting habitat, rainwater collection, and then prescribed burns, like a lot of things surrounding the drought conditions that California was in. I've also worked in food forestry. I got my permaculture certificate. And from there, I really liked doing the work that I was doing, but I recognized that kind of manual labor was not super sustainable for my body. So I wanted to find an outlet to continue making an impact in improving our climate. And I found the climate school, and it's been a perfect fit so far.
Thanks, Ian. I appreciate it. And guys, Ian's not going away. Ian's going to be staying with me throughout. And in certain touchstones, Ian's going to lend his voice and perspective on the program. Again, questions are welcome, guys. So as questions come up, feel free to ask. So in terms of a little bit of background on Columbia Climate School and Columbia University itself, I always like to kind of give you kind of a anchored perspective on the university and its structure, so to speak. So when we reference Columbia University, we are referring to the oldest university here in the state of New York, the fifth oldest in the country, and by many would describe as a blueprint for major research institutions here in the United States. So when you say Columbia University, you're referring to over 20 different undergraduate and graduate schools within that umbrella, so to speak. The majority of the schools are professional graduate schools, and you can think of, for example, Columbia Law School, Columbia School of Journalism, Columbia School of Social Work, the School of International and Public Affairs, Columbia Business School, the list goes on. And then the newest school introduced here at Columbia University is Columbia Climate School. The Climate School, in fact, was announced in 2020 and officially launched in 2021. We are a professional graduate research school. Currently, the only degree program that we offer is the MA in Climate and Society program. Although we will eventually be offering additional degree programs as we continue to scale and develop, which is always exciting. But just to give you a little bit of, description on the climate school, Columbia University is a global leader in climate and sustainability education, both at the undergraduate and graduate level. Interestingly, we did design one of the 10 most popular majors here at Columbia University, the major of sustainable development for undergrads. In terms of our education programs at Columbia Climate School, they definitely provide an interdisciplinary knowledge base for future climate leaders to work with business, communities, governments, and civil society to address the climate crisis. What I always like to, though, emphasize, yes, we are the newest school, but by no means were we at Columbia Climate School developed out of thin air at all. In fact, we were built with a 70+ year foundation here at Columbia University. So I always like to begin with describing Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, which is photographed on the lower left corner. Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory is located 20 miles north of Morningside Heights, our main campus, photographed on the right. It's located right there on the Hudson River in Rockland County. And it has, again, a 70-year history embedded within Columbia University and is ranked the #1 scientific institution in the US devoted to the earth and environmental sciences. A fun fact is one of our Lamont research professors is the first person in an academic paper in the 1970s to have coined the term global warming. Another interesting fact about Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory is that Lamont's responsible for developing the first model to accurately predict the extreme weathers associated with the El Nino weather events. So Lamont's definitely the tip of the spear as it relates to earth and environmental sciences here at Columbia University, and certainly the climate school. And then we have the Earth Institute. And the Earth Institute was the largest research center at Columbia University. In fact, there was over 750 environmental scientists, policy managers, lawyers, engineers working on issues of sustainable development and environmental management. Again, we want to lean into the fact that climate as a topic has to be interdisciplinary in nature. And we have to have many, many different stakeholders in the room to address the climate crisis. So from the Earth Institute, we built Columbia Climate School. And so that's where our footprint resides. Again, we have this really long-standing history with both Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory and, of course, the Earth Institute. In terms of the MA Climate and Society program, this degree program is a 1-year interdisciplinary degree designed to train students to understand and address the impacts of climate variability and change on society and the environment. We want you to be able to communicate the climate crisis. That's something really embedded within our core courses, and Ian can definitely share how that embed actually gets implemented. And how to implement climate information. We also, really lean into the idea of this interdisciplinary approach, and we take that throughout our climate core, but also in your elective journey, which we'll talk about. And then I always like to stress that some of our students are coming to this program with a very specific interest in mind. They know exactly how they wish to work in the climate space. Maybe it's very specific to climate and public health, or perhaps climate policy. And then we have students that are far more exploratory in nature. And again, Ian can share more details on how he sees that in his learning community. I also want to stress that, we have fantastic connections in terms of our alumni network and professional development opportunities, which I'll talk about shortly. And just to also give you some additional nuances about the MA Climate and Society, whenever we talk about Columbia Climate School, and I mentioned that we were announced in 2020 and launched in 2021, students immediately assume that this program was also launched in 2021. And that's actually not true. This program was actually launched in 2004 and graduated its first class in 2005. In fact, we have over 600 alumni from the MA Climate and Society program within our network. So this program actually used to be embedded within the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, and now is within Columbia Climate School. But I always like to emphasize that this also has a very strong alumni network. In terms of the students and the makeup of the student population, this current cohort currently has 103 students enrolled. About 40% of our students are international students representing 23 different countries of citizenship. And within our domestic student population, they represent 18 states. Something else we're very proud of is approximately 15% of our incoming class, or now our class, I should say, are actually the first in their family to attend college. We classify those students as first-generation college students, and the average age within our current cohort is 26 years old. Something else I want to highlight is our education backgrounds within the program. And again, this is just to again emphasize the diverse nature of our learning community. The program historically used to attract a STEM majority. So students in the STEM fields would typically make up about 2/3 of our student population. And that completely flipped within the last 3 years. Now we have over 2/3 of our students, interestingly, coming to this program from social science backgrounds, as well as the humanities. And then the remaining students come to our program with with the natural sciences, environmental sciences, and engineering. You might say, why do you see that evolution in the learning community? I would say just the sheer nature and growing interest in the climate space, certainly over recent years, has certainly driven that pivot. And we've also seen a growth in our student population. So, the cohort last year had roughly 76 students enroll. This year, in Ian's cohort and Vishy's cohort, we have 103 students. And we anticipate enrolling between 110 and 120 students in the coming year. I promise you I'm going to be now pivoting back to Ian because I think Ian has far more nuance and information to share as it relates to the climate curriculum. But I'll just briefly summarize this journey. It's a 1-year program. When you say what is the credit hour load, it's 34 credits. 22 of those credits are going to be made up of what we like to call the climate core. It's the idea of, regardless of your background or interest, if you are ultimately going to enter the climate space, you need to have this climate core foundation, which I'll briefly summarize. And then 12 credits are going to be made up of electives. Something that's really interesting about Columbia Climate School is we participate in a flat tuition model. So meaning you could actually take up to 20 credit hours each term, fall, spring, and summer, and you would pay the same tuition rate each term. So the summary of courses that we have listed here, or the hypothetical schedule that we have listed here, is just that hypothetical. You could potentially take more credit hours, for example, in the fall semester. And in fact, I'll allow kind of Ian to share exactly how he approached each semester. But just to kick things off, your first semester is going to be dynamics of climate variability and change, and then the 2 pillars of addressing the climate crisis being climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation. The dynamics course you can think of as your classic physics class, so to speak. It's going to teach you the science behind the climate crisis. And what I always like to stress is when you graduate from this program, if somebody stops you on the street and says, "Do you believe in climate change?" And you answer yes, and then they say why, you will be able to explain scientifically the why. And you'll also be able to kind of evolve the why depending on the constituents that you're speaking to, whether they have a strong science background or alternatively if they don't necessarily. So again, that goes into the climate communication, and I'll let Ian share a little bit more about how that translates in their final project. In terms of climate change mitigation and adaptation, I think it's really important that these courses be taught in tandem with one another. And one thing also just to stress is that a mitigation course is taught by Dr. Melissa Lott. She's our Director of Research at the Center for Global Energy Policy here at Columbia University, also known as CEGEP. And then climate change adaptation is taught by Dr. Lisa Dale, who has a really deep background in adaptation and has done extensive research specifically in Rwanda. And then moving into the spring semester, which is what Ian is currently tackling, we have the quantitative methods class that uses R. I always like to say this is your jobs course, because I always say data is king, and understanding data, telling a story based on data is critical regardless of industry, sector, or work. And so you'll be using R to tell stories based on climate data. And then we also have an applications in climate and society course. And then we wrap up with your summer, which is either going to be an internship or alternatively a consulting capstone, which I'll talk about. And you can also take additional electives. But let me just pause there. What I'd love to do now is ask Ian, can you kind of share with us your experiences in the climate core thus far? And if there's any highlights that you'd like to note about dynamics, mitigation, adaptation. Also, and I know I'm throwing a lot at you at once, but if you could kind of share your elective, or your, forgive me, your credit load, both in the fall and spring. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I think is most important about the core is that they're specific, obviously, to the subject that they're about. But what's really nice about the assignments and what you're able to do with it is you can make them yours. If you are interested in sustainable ag, you're able to dive into agriculture, or ag adaptation solutions in climate change adaptation, right? That can be part of your big case study. Mitigation, there's a lot of different subjects that you dive into. I used a lot of the mitigation assignments to explore what I wanted. For 1 week, I thought I was really interested in HVAC systems and making HVAC systems in buildings really interesting. And I did a week of assignments on that. And then I learned that that wasn't for me. And that's an important part of going to school. So what's really cool about these courses is while you're together and you're learning together about this one thing, you're able to still mold it to yourself, which I think is really valuable. In terms of electives, fall, I did not take extra electives. I stuck with the 15. I took a SUMA course. I cross-registered with the Sustainable Management Program, and I took a class on art and society, or art and sustainability, I'm sorry. And it's about all the ways that artists created positive change for climate better than policymakers or lawyers or scientists did in respective situations. It was very, very interesting. And then my second elective was climate justice. And that was, oh my God, it was an amazing course. Dr. Sheila Foster, she's with the climate school. She's absolutely amazing. I can't talk about her enough. Now in the spring, I'm actually taking an elevated course load, but I'm taking 17 and a half credits this semester. I am really diving into climate communications. I'm taking an elective on that. I'm taking actually a really interesting course just to have a interpretive side of my brain working instead of just analytical. I'm taking climate change, religion, and the Anthropocene. It's fascinating. It's offered through the religious school, so that's a cross registration as well. What else am I taking? I'm blanking on everything. In the after spring break, I'll be taking an energy justice practicum, which is going to be really interesting, and I'm going to talk more about that when we start talking about capstones. And then
Food system course, the food
sorry.
system, food system.
Food systems, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
sorry, I have
taking
to give it a
food
plug.
systems with Dr. Jessica Fanzo, and Dr. Ruth. I'm blanking on her name too, and I'm so sorry. You
Dr.
look
Ruth
them up; they're
DeFries.
amazing. Ruth
Yeah, Ruth
DeFries, thank you so
DeFries and
much.
Dr. Jessica Fanzo are incredible.
Yeah, and I'm taking an overloaded course load because I loved everything being offered, and I think they're all both really fascinating and very applicable to what I want to do. And yeah, that's my journey.
That's super helpful, Ian. And then Ian, if you wanted to, I did the dynamics course. I thought it was just fun, like your finals project. Can you talk a little bit about that? I just thought
Yeah.
it was interesting because yeah, I think it goes into the idea of climate communication.
Absolutely. So something that for quant and dynamics that the professors do really well is they also see the graphs that you just saw showing the makeup of the backgrounds of where students came from. And so they understand that you're not going into dynamics with necessarily a physics background, and they understand that some students are. And so they do a good job of making it challenging both for challenging and engaging both for people without and with that background. And so within dynamics, you're learning a lot of physics, you're doing a lot of equations, you're certainly like really getting into hard conversations. We talk about the physics of geoengineering. Those were very interesting conversations. But also for the final, you are doing a climate comms video. So you make a video explaining hard science to a specific audience. So mine was a very lay person who doesn't really talk about climate a lot. Some people had their lay audience be like Columbia undergrad. And so what you're doing is you're learning how to synthesize all the information that you learned and then throwing it back out into the world. In quant, they do a really good job. Yes, we're programming with R. Yes, we're learning a lot of statistical analyses methods, but also we're doing presentations on what it means to have climate data be misrepresented and how some climate scientists have done bad faith representations of climate science. And so we're really diving into real world implications of what this data means and how to present it to the world in an equitable way and in a way that isn't misrepresenting anything. And so what's nice is that it's not all one discipline. They are making sure that you know how to talk about this in a way that hits a lot of different audiences.
Thanks, Ian. I appreciate it. So let's now talk a little bit briefly. Anybody in the audience interested in part-time? If you are, feel free to. I love seeing. I just love to get a temperature gauge. If you want to type in, okay, awesome, Caesar. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, so one thing I'd like to note is that this program is really, if I'm going to be authentic about it, is designed as full-time because most of the courses are during the day, but we do recognize that there are some incredible student profiles that Columbia Climate School just absolutely does not want to miss out on, that you might be doing amazing work, perhaps in the climate space, an adjacent space that allows you to pivot. And we want to ensure that there could be a pathway for you. So we did develop last year a part-time pathway. And it's an option that you would select in the admissions application. You would have to provide a brief statement explaining why you are interested in enrolling part-time. And the one-year degree program model that we just shared with you in the previous slide would become a 2-year program. It's going to be a highly kind of prescribed core curriculum sequence. So you'll know exactly which core courses you will be taking in which semester each year. And you do have an assigned advisor as a part-time student. It's a very intimate learning community. We have around 4 students this year that opted into a part-time standing. So I don't want to say it's a typical path, but it's definitely one that we offer. And especially if in order for you to enroll in this program, you need to be part-time. But I want to just read this out. Students enrolling in the part-time program generally include one or more of the following profiles. So people with demonstrated significant work experience in climate or climate adjacent spaces, working professionals currently in any space that can reasonably assert that they can readily apply what the curriculum is in the program to their current work, or to easily transition to climate or a related field where they can apply the program to that profession. To give you an idea of the individuals that we have currently part-time, for example, one of our part-time students is a sustainability consultant with PwC. She takes exactly what she's learning and obviously applying it to her practice. We also have a student that works in government that's currently enrolled in the part-time option. And another student that has more of an entrepreneurial background. So they're all working professionals in essence. And if you have any questions specific to part-time, feel free to drop it in that Q&A, and we can definitely address that. I now want to transition to your elective journey, because oftentimes this is something that is the most exciting to so many of our students whenever we talk about the MA Climate and Society program. And something I've witnessed just in my 2 years working with this school is the quick evolution and the scale of the number of courses with which we're offering. In the spring of 22, we had 3 electives. Last year it was 10, and the list just keeps on growing, which is very exciting. So this is a listing. In fact, Ian helped update this deck a couple weeks ago to make sure to include some of the new courses, but they include a series of climate justice courses that we're very excited about, and that if you spoke to us 2 years ago, weren't embedded within the curriculum. So they include climate justice theory, practice, and policy, climate and energy justice practicum, which I believe is what Ian's going to be taking, correct, in Spring B, which is awesome. We also have climate change and disaster management. We have climate mobility, food systems and climate interactions, which is taught by Dr. Jessica Fanzo. She is phenomenal and extremely dynamic. We also have strategic communications for climate change. So again, our list of electives is only continuing to evolve and grow. And then what I think is the biggest draw to Columbia University is what I always like to say, the cross-registration journey. So up until very recently, the MA Climate and Society program, historically, students always cross-registered for their electives because they were embedded within the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. Now we are seeing more of our students obviously taking climate school electives, which is exciting, but the cross-registration journey does not discontinue in any way, shape, or form. In fact, this is a huge draw for you. So you can cross-register in the School of International Public Affairs, the Mailman School of Public Health, Columbia School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation, which I'm going to talk about specializations shortly. So a lot of students really enjoy cross-registration. In fact, Ian alluded to it when he briefly mentioned his fall semester. He cross-registered in the School of Professional Studies with the Sustainability Management program. But let me pause there. Ian, I'd love to hear your approach to cross-registration, and you can be authentic about pain points perhaps as well, and kind of how you see the elective journey or what electives you've taken.
Yeah, absolutely. So my electives kind of, I'm sure you could gather this from what I was talking about. I'm a little more all over the place. I like gathering a bunch of different information and synthesizing it for myself. I'm really looking to get into a justice and systems approach career path. So that works for me. But so I really didn't cross-register that much. I have cross-registered with the religious school, and I have cross-registered with uh, the School of Professional Studies with SUMA. And other than that, Climate Society really filled a lot of my needs, like all the Climate Society electives. However, I'm not necessarily a typical student. I have a friend, she's really interested in developing curriculum for schools around climate, and she cross-registers with the teacher school often. I have a lot of friends who are cross-registered with the Columbia Law School right now, and they're very into what they're doing there. There's someone who really likes GSAP classes, and they really like doing architecture, and it's architecture and like internal, like what's inside the buildings and how to make that a less toxic space. And so there's a lot of different ways to cross-register. Now, what I will say is cross-registration is different per school, right? So there's certain ways to make it easier and harder, and some of the schools are much easier to cross-register with. Some of them you really have to get face-to-face and say, hi, I want to do this, and you have to go a little bit out of your way and talk to them. But what's great is Columbia is built to be a learning environment. And so for the most part, all the stories I hear, people get what they want, as long as, you know, there might be friction on the way, but people are able to study what they want to study.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, and at the end of the session, I might ask. I don't want to put Vishy on the spot, although Vishy definitely is happy to share. I might ask Vishy to also share his electives journey towards the end when we fully address Q&A, just to talk about how he approached the electives. Really, there is no cookie cut. I always like to say there's even no typical climate and society student. Everybody approaches this in an incredibly dynamic and different way. And really, it depends on what skills you're looking to build up. If there's a specific gap that you're looking to address during your graduate school journey. So it is an individual student kind of decision. Now, new areas of specialization. I want to also highlight these opportunities. We launched 2 specializations that we piloted for Ian's course. One of them, or class, forgive me, is disaster risk management, which is in partnership with the National Center for Disaster Preparedness. And then the second specialization is climate in the built environment, which is in partnership with the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation. One thing I like to note is that we are always evolving this program, which is something that you always want to see in a program. You want to see that that programs are getting feedback from students and faculty, and that an evolution takes place, that it's not static in nature. And so the areas of specialization is a direct result of that feedback. We have had students in the learning community that requested a slightly more curated elective journey, so to speak. And so to address that, we specifically developed these specializations. Again, it's the idea of allowing you to focus into a particular subject area. Now, one thing I just want to note about the specializations, these are completely optional. Obviously, these are quite specific. So some of you joining us today might not have any interest in necessarily climate in the built environment, and that's totally fine. You don't have to select a specialization to join the Climate and Society program. These are completely optional. In the admissions application, if you did select a specialization, and let's say you are admitted to the program, you will again be asked by the program if in fact you do wish to pursue the specialization later in the summer months. So this is really just in the admissions application. I like to note raising your hand is an interest in a specialization, not necessarily 100% committing to the specialization. Specializations also don't appear on your diploma nor your transcripts. What they are doing is ensuring that you're guaranteed seats in classes that could meet the need of the specialization. That's especially important for climate and the built environment, as all those courses are embedded within the Graduate School of Architecture and Planning and taught by our tenured faculty within GSAP. So those courses are highly sought after, and by selecting climate and the built environment, they're making sure to carve out space for you in those desired classes. There is a specialization YouTube video. It's literally embedded on the academic specialization site for our program. In fact, if I can ask either Damaris or Vichy to go ahead and copy and paste in the chat box the academic specialization site, because that video is there, and both Professor Jeff Schleglemelch and Dean Danielle Smaller go into detail on the different courses offered in each one of those specializations. I want to go ahead now and transition over to summer internships and just briefly talk about kind of the idea of transforming concepts into practice and being able to take everything that you learned within the Climate and Society program and apply them either in an internship or alternatively a capstone project. Historically, the internship was the only option, interestingly. The program eventually did evolve to offer capstone options, which I think is also an exciting opportunity. Typically, students secure their internships in the spring semester. That usually occurs in March or April timeline. And you can see here a listing of some of the internships our students have gone on to work in. Again, we have a very long list of alumni, and most of those students did secure internships. So I also like to highlight the fact that we have two full-time staff members that are devoted to your career development. So that's something else I like to emphasize. From day one, you'll be able to have conversations as it relates to kind of your goals and ambitions and what type of organizations you hope to target as it relates to the summer. In terms of capstone workshops, these are going to be group-based projects, and we typically partner with a nonprofit organization. So you can see here some projects that we have partnered with, like the United Nations Foundation for Climate and Environment Program, also WFLA TV, which is the local Tampa Bay NBC affiliate, and Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. They had a capstone project relating to hurricanes on the Gulf Coast. That one was especially near and dear to me, as I am a Tampa Bay native. We have also partnered with the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Anybody that is interested in learning a little bit more about different historical capstone clients or projects, feel free to email the admissions inbox and we can send you a more robust listing. What we do is we haven't done it yet for Ian and Vichy. Ian, correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't done it yet, but we send out a listing of capstone possible capstone clients, and then allow the cohort to then vote on their top organizations. So we don't guarantee that you'll be able to get with the exact project of choice, but we hope that we can best match you. And then oftentimes the question becomes, should I do an internship or a capstone? And that's really an internal question for yourself. It might depend on where you are in your career, what skills and objectives you're hoping to accomplish in those summer months. It's very possible that, for example, a capstone is in an industry or sector that you're specifically targeting and that you're hoping to network within, and that makes complete sense for you. Or alternatively, maybe the internship makes far more sense. And actually, I hate to do this, I'm putting Vichy on the spot, but every student takes kind of, it has their own journey as it relates to it. So Vichy, do you mind if I talk, can you come off camera and talk about the internship that you're specifically going to be doing this spring semester? My apologies, Vichy. I know I shouldn't have done this to you last minute, but Vichy is going to definitely talk a little bit more. But who are you going to be working with this semester?
Yeah, so I already started my internship. I'm working with Grow All Climate Fund. They are based out of Boston. They are a high-level philanthropy organization focusing on energy transition. So they focus on different geographies. Right now, we are focusing on Indonesia, India, and some parts of Eastern Europe. So we work with grantees specifically in helping them scale up between a span of 1 to 3 years.
Excellent. And Vichy's coming back, I promise. And so right now, for example, with Ian, Ian actually shared with me, I don't want to speak for you, but Ian's weighing options, whether or not the internship or the capstone, or actually, forgive me, I'm misspeaking. Ian, share your journey because I just misspoke. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so I am currently in an atypical situation, in that the Energy Justice Practicum, which is a new course offered this semester, necessitates a capstone. So it is part of working in a just transition here in New York State. There are 3 different capstone options offered through that class. But the class is there to make sure that the work that we are doing is as impactful and equitable as possible. And so there's a lot of prep time in order to get the capstone done right. So as of right now, that is what I am currently doing. And yeah, I'm very excited. I think in talking about internships and capstones, I think a lot of people are very drawn to internships and saying it leads directly to a job, and that absolutely can be true. And there's also plenty of alumni that we have a job with the organization that they were doing the capstone with immediately after doing the capstone. And the capstone is a great opportunity if you want to leave grad school with research to get that research and get your name on it.
Awesome. Thanks, Ian. So now I want to just, a perfect segue into going into career resources and professional development. Here at the Columbia Climate School, we have phenomenal resources, including, as I mentioned earlier, in fact, 2 dedicated career development officers. We host a variety of employer info sessions. Something we're extremely excited about is the All Ivy Environmental and Sustainable Development Career Fair. This is a major event. We invite students from across the Ivy Leagues to come to Columbia University. And in fact, if any of you are on the call today, the All Ivy Environmental and Sustainable Development Career Fair is going to be on Friday, February 23rd, I believe. I hope I didn't misstate that. Over 80 employers will be descending upon Columbia University in the environment and sustainable space. And over 800 students have registered for this career fair, which we're extremely excited about. We also have an exclusive job list and alumni directory through our site Simplicity. We also have different internship programs. And then we have sustainability skills seminars, which are hosted throughout the academic year. I'm going to be, in fact, different staff have to attend the different skills seminars just to help out. And I'm really excited. I'm going to be attending a skills seminar on climate finance in March. There's going to be, there's sustainability skills seminars on sustainability consulting roles, on lead certification. So really dynamic skill seminars in that space. Sustainable fashion, I feel like, was one of the skill seminars that occurred recently. That was a hot topic. So that's also something that our professional development office puts on and cultivates. And then they also host a sustainability networking evening, which is super fun, always in Midtown at the Columbia Club. In what month was that? November? I know Ian and Bishi were there. So anyways, a lot of different opportunities as it relates to professional development. In terms of the class of 2022, and we will be publishing the class of 23 data within the next month by the first week of March, certainly. If you look at this pie chart, the class of 22, about 15% continued on into academia, 16% went into the public sector, 30% went on to the NGO space, and finally 40% went into the private sector. This was an interesting year for us, and we're continuing to see this trend line of the majority, or the larger section of the pie, so to speak, going into the private sector. Because to provide you perspective, the Climate Society typically placed around 15% of students in the private sector. If you looked at the historic, 10 to 15 years ago, we're seeing a direct result, I think, of the Inflation Reduction Act and just the growing opportunities of the private sector catching up to dictated policy. So this is only a growing field, and we expect that the private sector to continue to build within the ratio of outcomes. In terms of recent graduates, we've recently a graduate went into McKinsey as a sustainability insight analyst. A student went to UNICEF as a geospatial risk analyst. Michigan State Government hired one of our students as a climate data science officer. We've also had in years the World Bank. In fact, one of our, my July info session featured a World Bank student, Maya Korb. We have also had a climate risk advisor with the Red Cross Red Crescent Climate Center, the City of Los Angeles. There's plenty of opportunities in local governments I should also highlight. And here's a slightly longer list for you to kind of peruse. I'd also, if I cannot help, I have to ask if either Vichy or forgive me, Damaris could copy and paste the employer section of our Climate and Society website. There's a really great interactive graphic where you can click on the pie chart and look at, for example, the roles in the NGO space, who were the employers, what were the job titles. So if we can highlight that website in the chat box, that would be awesome. So now I want to just briefly talk about financial aid, and we'll first start with a bucket on fellowships. So I'll just highlight there are a couple different options. Number one are Climate and Society fellowships. Those, I want to say that those are competitive, but applicants to the program are automatically considered for Climate and Society fellowships, and those would be in your acceptance letter if you did receive one. Those usually the fellowship awards typically range anywhere from $10,000 to upwards of $35,000, although I want to be transparent and note $35,000 is an unusual level. But again, what I always recommend is if you're interested in those fellowships, you should take advantage of applying sooner rather than later, as we have limited funds in that space. So again, Climate and Society fellowships, you're automatically considered, and they are merit-based fellowships. We also offer departmental research assistantships. Those are opportunities that will be provided to our admitted students to apply to specifically in the month of July and August. So to give you an idea, we offered roughly 30 departmental research assistantships for this cohort for Ian and Vichy, and roughly 75 students applied to them. We call them DRAs, and it provides $6,000 in compensation for work in both the fall and spring semester. Typically, you begin work in the month of October. And what we do at Columbia Climate School is we solicit the various research centers, both within the climate school and at Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory and across the university, to see if they have any interesting research projects with that climate lens. These research centers then submit their job proposals. The Columbia Climate School approves them, and that's when we go ahead and advertise them to our students. Again, there's around 30 of those opportunities that are offered, and admitted students will be allowed to apply to those in later summer months. And then finally, we do offer, we have websites that outline external fellowships. And if I again can ask either Damaris or Vichy to go ahead and share, we have a GSAS offers an external fellowship database directory. They have a couple different databases they highlight. I love to share those external fellowship options. And then we also put together a Google spreadsheet. In fact, Ian and Vichy kindly did it, of different organizations, both eligible for US students and international students. They also even included timelines for when you need to apply for said opportunities. So if we can highlight both of those, that would be phenomenal. And something I always like to stress about external fellowships is researching early is key. That's the one thing Ian and Vichy always emphasize to me whenever we talk about it. But making sure that you're staying on top of it, and you have to dedicate the time. Really and truly, it does take time to apply to those external fellowships and ensuring you're following within those timelines. I also want to note that a majority of students apply for federal and private loans and utilize those federal and private loans when entering the MA Climate and Society program. And because we used to be embedded within the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, our Office of Financial Aid is still the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. So they would be the office that can serve as a resource specifically to address questions relating to the loan process. Many of our students that are US citizens or permanent residents, they'll submit the FAFSA to determine federal aid eligibility. And then for international students, we do have a number of students that have secured or able to secure loans through private lenders. And the two organizations that we highlight at Columbia that don't require a US citizen or permanent resident as a co-signer on the loans is Empower and Prodigy Finance. And more information on that is on the Student Financial Services website relating to loans. In terms of applying to the MA Climate and Society program, we are still very much accepting admissions applications. Our deadline is March 1st. So there's still absolutely time to submit a strong application. I always like to emphasize the word a strong application. Our deadline is March 1st, 2024. And in the online application, we'll ask you to upload your resume, 2 letters of reference, And when I say 2 letters of reference, you'll simply provide us the email and the job title and the name of your recommender, and then our office will email them directly to upload their letter. If you've been enrolled in a university within the last 5 years, one of the letters should be academic in nature. And then we ask for unofficial transcripts. You don't need to send us the official college transcript. Simply uploading unofficial college transcripts will allow our admissions committee to make that decision. And the transcripts do need to, though, list your name, the course titles, the grades, when you took those courses. So I also want to note that. And then any of you joining the call today, if English is not your first language and it was not the primary language of instruction in your undergraduate university, we will need either a TOEFL, an IELTS, or a Duolingo English test, one of those 3 test scores. And we are looking for at least a 100 on the TOEFL, the internet-based TOEFL, a 7.5 on the IELTS, and then a 135 on the Duolingo English test. You might say, why do you have English standard minimums? The reason is because our program is taught in English, and Columbia University, you're applying to this institution because you're deeply interested in a rigorous academic environment. So therefore, we need to ensure that you have a strong English foundation to be able to succeed in the curriculum. And then finally, the statement of purpose. Which I would say, if you're thinking about the admissions application process as a painting, the statement of purpose is the frame. It's going to address many, many questions that our admissions committee is going to have regarding your candidacy. I just wanted to give another plug on our application process website. And in fact, if Vichy or Damaris could also highlight that website, we actually have an application tips and strategies YouTube video embedded there. And 5 of our current students are featured, not only sharing their backgrounds and journeys, which I can't emphasize enough is so important. In fact, I'm going to plug another website. Forgive me, guys. I'm really making the Q&A team work overtime. But we have a public climate school directory. You can go to our directory of students and see all the students' backgrounds, education backgrounds, professional histories. If we can also highlight the MA Climate and Society directory, that would be amazing as well. But in the statement of purpose, we want you to share the key experiences that have contributed to your commitment to work on climate change issues. In addition, what are your academic and professional goals, and what knowledge and skills are you hoping to develop through enrollment in Columbia Climate School? And finally, why is enrollment in Climate and Society critical in helping you achieve your goals? And which Climate and Society core course are you most excited to complete? That last section is very important. Our admissions committee is deeply interested in seeing and hearing from students that have a hunger for the climate core. That is the through line. That is what is going to connect all of the students within the cohort, is the tackling of the climate core. So they want to hear, which core course are you most excited? Perhaps it's mitigation, maybe adaptation. Maybe it's quantitative methods. You're just so jazzed about using R, or maybe it's the dynamics course. So it really gives thought behind which climate core course you're most excited to complete. And then finally, our final admissions application deadline is March 1st, 2024. And I want to stress admissions@climate.columbia.edu. That's our inbox. Feel free to email us with questions. And we also have where was I going with this? I wanted to note something else, and all of a sudden I paused. We have follow all of our social media too. I always fail to do this during the sessions, but we have a great Instagram account. In fact, Ian, sorry, I'm going to plug this, Ian, but Ian was featured a day in the life, kind of as a Columbia Climate School student on Instagram. If you want to check that out, it was super fun. And then we also have Twitter. For those of you that might still be using Facebook, that's an option, but follow us on social media. You'll see some of the incredible research and student profiles. They did a profile on Vichy recently as well. So I want to plug that. Now let's go ahead, and I like to stop the share. Maybe we'll go to full video, and I'd like to go ahead and see the questions that have been coming in. And Vichy, Damaris, are there any questions that that we should highlight for the full group that could be helpful for everybody? So looking at the one of the questions was relating to financial aid breakdown since I have been admitted. Yes, what we can absolutely do, if any of you are joining us accepted to the program, we can give you the current tuition fees associated with specifically this this academic year. Tuition does increase slightly each year. Typically, it's around 4%, 3 to 4%. And then in terms of financial aid, if you're a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, please ensure that you submit a FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, and also make sure that you're in contact with the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences office and their website for protocols relating to the financial aid and process. So that's something else I just want to highlight. Application fee waivers are absolutely available. They're available for two segments: students that show significant financial need, and we ask you upload documentation displaying that financial need. Details are available on our website. And then also students that are a part of certain student groups. For example, United States military veterans do not pay an application fee. Also, if you participated in certain AmeriCorps organizations, if you participate in Teach It for America or City Year, the Peace Corps, we also offer application fee waivers for those students. And then the next question was relating to merit fellowships. It noted that the priority deadline date is, I want to stress, is strongly recommended. Have students been able to receive merit fellowships during the March 1st deadline? Yes. So if you are interested in applying, it doesn't mean that you will not be eligible for a merit fellowship. So I do encourage you to go ahead and move forward with an admissions application. Again, though, I don't want anybody to feel rushed in this decision. If you were not anticipating applying for the fall 2024 entry, by all means, the Columbia Climate School is not going anywhere. So by all means, fall 25 could be a great time as well for you to apply. And another question that came in is, I've been out of college for more than a decade. Are there resources for support for the technical aspects of the core classes? I may or may not remember much about physics at this point, which I completely understand. I'm actually going to give a pause and allow Ian to kind of touch on this. The TAs and things immediately come to mind. And in fact, I didn't mention the math bootcamp, but let me pause there. And Ian, can you kind of address that?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, I would like to say within my cohort, I believe there's at least over 5 people who were out of school for more than a decade. Or at least that's what my brain is saying. I might be off by a few years for some of the people, but you are not alone. You are someone who is very much part of this community. I do really like how in the program, there's some people fresh from undergrad, there's some people like me who are working for a few years, and there's people who this is a mid-career shift or a late career shift. And everyone pooling knowledge together is one of the cooler things about the program. It is very community centered, and we are one of the main resources for helping. A lot of the projects that happen in dynamics and quant are very collaborative projects, and you are not going to just be stranded on your own. Like Alfred kind of touched on, there is a summer boot camp that gets sent out. It's not required, but it does give a lot of refreshment to ideas, like significant figures and like very basic physics things, and it's meant to be a refresher. It's kind of funny. I had fun doing it. I think one of the alumni who I know dearly wrote it, and she did a very good job writing it. It's a way to ease in, and again, the professors know that people are coming from a diverse amount of backgrounds. Like, it is a small enough cohort that the professors know what's going on and who is who and what you bring to the table. And they are not expecting you to like perform extraordinarily like someone who is fresh from undergrad if that's not who you are. And so there is a lot of support systems. There's a lot of different on-campus resources. Columbia as a resource is amazing. I struggle a lot with different writing formats and like the different formats that certain documents go into. The Writing Center is an amazing resource for that. I studied theater in undergrad, and I did not do any math going into this. My last physics class was like sophomore year of my high school. And I have been able, with resources of TAs, office hours, and my fellow students, I got through dynamics, and I will say that it was challenging, but it was worth it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ian. Another question that came in related to the Duolingo. I want to really just emphasize, Zara, we strongly encourage you to retake a Duolingo English test. If you scored below the 135. So I understand how disappointing it is because you're so close to what the number was, but we really encourage you to retake the Duolingo test if that is the case. And I see that Vichy flagged the question relating to internships and the capstone. I think one thing that's a big value add is the fact that you do have an option of an internship or capstone. I do want to also emphasize that, you know, and I know that Ian's right now in the process. This is like fast approaching, and some students could have anxiety around the summer months, but there are definitely resources available, and it only continues to grow. For example, last year we had one career development officer. This year we're adding 2. We're very excited. We're going to be welcoming a new director in the coming weeks. So we're only going to be adding resources as it relates to your professional development and career opportunities. Yeah, am I addressing that well, Ian? I don't know if you have another nuance perhaps to share. I know you're currently in it, so.
Yeah, I can add to it. So all my whole class is in the looking for internships and jobs and summer plans vibe. So this is a very pertinent question from my perspective. And I think something that's important to flag is the program is very job oriented. There's a lot of experience that you gain throughout the program that is either hard skills or side things. Like there's a GIS programming workshop being offered later today that's just available for you for students to go to. There's a lot of things that people fresh from undergrad are going to graduate like with experience worth having in the job market. So I recognize and I understand the stress. I harbor a little bit of it myself, but the climate school is desirable for jobs. Having Columbia Climate School is a very cool thing. And there's a lot of there's so many resources that go out for summer internships, summer capstones, developing those plans. So where we have a lot of safety nets, which I find I really appreciate that aspect of the program.
And we get in our interesting, I get emails all the time, not all the time, but quite often. I just forwarded Ian some UN opportunities that came up recently. We always get employers that reach out really to different, we always funnel the emails then, but different job postings. They want Columbia Climate Schools students to think about working with their organization. So, so I want to lean into that. Another question came in related to climate and the built environment specialization be a good fit for me if I want to go into city planning and environmental planning, or does the specialization focus more on architecture and design? That is such a good question. One thing I think the former. I think going into city planning or environmental planning is very much the theme, and perhaps Vichy, I don't know if you mind, I'm going to put Vichy on the spot. Vichy did take, is not pursuing the specialization, but took a climate and the built environment specialization course. You do not need to be an architect by any means to join that specialization. So Vichy, do you want to speak on it briefly? I'm sorry for putting you on the spot.
Yeah, no. So I chose the specialization track last semester, thinking that would be the pathway that I would have for my career. So I took a class with GSAP specifically, and we did not need the technical skills specifically because you were integrated with students who have this backgrounds, and you could pick up these skills on along the journey, or you could bring in your specific mitigation and adaptation lens, which I did a lot, especially policy making, and the project turned out really well. So it depends, but basics of GIS or story maps is useful. Otherwise, it should be fine.
Awesome. Thanks, Vichy. Great question. Any other questions? And again, I definitely encourage watching the video on the academic specializations. Danielle Smoller goes into detail on the various courses that are offered through that option. Okay, well, excellent. I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody that joined the session today. For those of you that are going to move forward with the March 1st application deadline, we strongly encourage you to do so. As I mentioned, there's still time to apply. And feel free to reach out if you do have any additional questions. We really, really want to serve as a resource and ensure you have all the information you need as you're performing your research on graduate programs. Again, thank you so much, everybody. Thanks you, Elena. Thank you so much for attending.